Look at some news stories. This one was good, clean fun. So there's a vulnerability in the Erlang language, and somebody wrote a exploit for it and said, gee, that was pretty easy, but didn't publish the exploit. So this guy decided to use AI to make the exploit. And it's pretty interesting what he did. They said it's pretty easy. And so what he did was find the versions before and after patching, and he wants to take the difference between them. So he gave GPT the prompt, check out these versions and compare them and figure out what's wrong. And it wrote a Python script to diff the versions. And then he asked it to write the exploit. And the first version didn't work. But then he asked the AI to fix it, and it worked. So it's pretty interesting. Like I say, AI is getting more and more useful. And it's very interesting. This is a way to use AI in the world of security where it may help us. This is pretty amazing. They made a drone to capture lightning bolts, used like a lightning rod. So they built a drone and they put a cage around it to deflect the lightning so it doesn't hit the circuitry, and they were able to catch a lightning bolt. It has a wire going to the ground that grounds it. It flies up into a cloud. It collects the lightning. So that's an interesting use of a drone. And after that, it was able to keep flying. So this is typhoid fever. Typhoid fever, apparently there is a vaccine for it, although they don't talk about the vaccine being used very much. So that may be good because it turns out that they treat it with antibiotics, but it has evolved resistance to almost all the antibiotics. There's only one remaining antibiotic that works, and it's becoming resistant to that. I've heard this for decades about almost all diseases. Our bad practices, like putting antibiotics in soap and stuff where it's just all over the place where it doesn't need to be, encourage the growth of antibiotic-resistant pathogens, and they're coming. And of course, now that the United States Health Department is being led by a lunatic that doesn't believe in pasteurizing milk or using vaccines, and these beliefs are spreading, then these diseases are spreading like crazy. Typhoid fever, I haven't heard of it in America yet, but whooping cough is back and much bigger than it's been in years, and measles, of course, and we can expect polio pretty soon. So I was just talking on Paul's Security Week. They were thinking about how education should be changed, and I really think grade school and high school should focus on teaching students critical thinking and how to verify facts, because there's so much false information spreading in our society. It really ought to be part of the curriculum, how to determine if a course is credible, if the source is credible, and how to detect the truth when people are lying to you, because it's a huge problem. So there are various diseases that cause the retina to stop working. And there's been no known way to fix it, but these guys have a very interesting fix. They make gold particles, gold nanoparticles, and they stick them in your eye, and they settle where the retina, on top of the retina that's not working anymore, and then they activate the gold particles with a laser. So they're now able to send in vision signals and make it so you can see. They're basically replacing your retina that's not working with gold with some kind of coating that replaces those cells and gives you vision back. So this sounds like it may be a real step forward for people. I know one of the worst vision problems is macular degeneration. It happens when people get old, where they lose the center of their vision, and all they can see is the periphery, so they can sort of see enough to like tell dark from light and not ram into a wall, but they can't watch TV or read anymore, which is really a drag, and this sounds like a treatment that might help. And so this is something in the lore of science fiction for years. If you could just steal money from an ATM, and apparently it's happening. They say from the Chinese underground, they have found how to exploit near-field communication technology, which is the thing where you wave your credit card in front of a reader without sticking it in anything, and it has short-range radio to read it. And they've been able to break into point-of-sale terminals to the extent of doing damages exceeding millions of dollars for a financial institution. So it's interesting, and they have sophisticated tools to do this, and they're talking about how it works. So it's interesting. There apparently are weaknesses to be exploited there, and they've been able to exploit them. So this one is very interesting. So, as you probably know, if you have a lot of Bitcoin, you don't leave it on your computer. It's too likely to get hacked. You put it on a hardware wallet, which is a little USB-looking thing. And the point is, it has the master key to get in your Bitcoin wallet, but it's not connected to any computer or network, so nobody can steal anything from it. That's the idea. And however, the question is, if somebody steals that wallet entirely, can they get in without knowing your PIN? And there are a few cases where they've been able to do this. This is the field of hardware hacking. And it turns out that a lot of them are using the ESP32 programmable logic controller. And here's quite appropriate, this cryptography class, here's various flaws that can happen. For example, when you derive the private key, you might have an invalid key that can be predicted. You might have weak pseudo-random number generator, using the wrong random number generator that's not really random enough, so you can predict the private key. You might be able to forge a signature, and then you'd be able to sign a transaction without knowing the key. You might be able to hack ECC. We'll be talking about this later in the lecture. The invalid curve attack is one of the attacks on elliptic curve cryptography, which is used in Bitcoin. And substitute the public key, use outdated libraries. These are various flaws that could happen. And now they've found a severe cryptographic vulnerability in this microcontroller that's used in all kinds of hardware. And so it's a stealthy backdoor that allows attackers to introduce hidden flaws via module updates, a supply chain attack. So they have invalid private key. It fails to reject keys that are less than 0. So you can inject an invalid private key, which apparently can lead to loss of money. You can, certain cryptocurrencies are vulnerable to signature forgery because they don't use a more modern forgery system that was put in with Bitcoin Improvement Project 137. This is one of the many problems with cryptocurrency. There are a lot of cryptocurrencies, and not all of them keep up with all the security measures. So if you stick to the main ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're pretty frequently updated. That's like using a Mac OS or Windows. But if you go to one of the smaller ones, they're often sort of more sloppily written and more sloppily updated. And a lot of people do that to trade between those currencies to try to make money. A weak pseudo-random number generator was used, which is really dangerous, and apparently that applies to Bitcoin. And multiplying, we'll talk about the elliptic curve, so all these flaws are in there, and it's pretty serious. It means that a whole bunch of hardware wallets are probably hackable. So that's interesting. And so, UC has been enrolling more students. Remember, the original plan of the University of California system was to provide a free education for every student in California. It never was free, and they never had enough room for all the students, but they're trying to have more. But now the state is going to cut the budget, and it's going to halt the growth, and they're going to have to let fewer students in. That's what can be expected. Like I said, it's a very bad time for education and pretty much a bad time for any kind of economic activity in America. I just heard the Dow Jones fell for 1,000 points 4 days in April so far, and that's a total of 11 times that's ever happened in history. 4 of them have been this month, and it seems likely that Trump has done so much damage to the dollar and the American financial system that even if he starts making intelligent decisions now, it's too late to prevent a major crash. So I think there's going to be a lack of money in every sector, and especially the government sector, because Elon Musk is cutting all that. Even if the stock market was going up and private businesses were making money, the government would still be canceling everything, and that's funding the colleges mostly. So it's a very grim time for education, but really for everything now, because the tariffs are crashing the entire economy. So there's a lighthearted ransomware group. They really infect people with ransomware, and they really encrypt their files, so it's a real attack. But in the message, they send a message joking about Elon Musk. So the ransomware payload is a real payload, but when you get infected, they pop up a box saying, you've been hacked by Doge, and you have to give us $1 trillion. So apparently you can contact them and negotiate for a reasonable amount, but it's them trying to get some attention. And there's an interesting walkthrough here showing how they get infected and the various stages of the infection. It would be useful for sort of the malware analysis class or the incident response class. And of course, 60 Minutes had a couple of shows that didn't please Trump, and therefore he's punishing them. Now the Paramount that owns the company that owns 60 Minutes wants to merge with another company, and in the current government climate of extreme corruption and fear, there is a wide belief that you can't get the government to cooperate with anything unless you bribe Trump. So that's why Vietnam, in order to get the tariffs lowered, they approved a Trump hotel, and they also approved a second thing that just went straight to Trump. So I said something for Musk. They also approved like an Elon Musk sale. They thought, they understand how this works. You just have to bribe those people, and then they'll approve you're being able to survive in business. And so the new 60 Minutes chief has been proud of their journalistic independence, and they're considered a very good source of news because they're not being pressured to make politically expedient calculations. But the new superior above him is demanding that he change his editorial decisions to praise Trump and be more in accordance with that. And rather than doing that, he's resigning, which is a pretty extreme thing to do because he was a very powerful, very highly paid figure in the media landscape. And the media, like teaching, is a very bad business right now. It's probably going to be very hard for him to find another job. And all this happened before. In the 40s and 50s with the Red Scare, there was a powerful guy named Joseph McCarthy who, just like Trump and Elon Musk, came up with complete lies, tormented all kinds of people he didn't like, and if you fell on the wrong side of him, you got blacklisted and you couldn't get a job anywhere. They might spread to everybody that really you were a communist and unemployable. And I think that's the case now. Anybody that stands up to Trump is afraid that they'll never be able to get a job anywhere because, like Chris Krebs dared to be in charge of cybersecurity in America in the first Trump administration, and he said the election of 2020 went to Joe Biden. And if you say that, Trump will hate you forever. And he drove him out of the company where he was hired. He quit from that company, saying, my presence in this company is going to make it impossible for this company to survive. And so he's got a very limited employment opportunities. Only can go to only like resistance places. So it's important that we all resist as much as possible, as soon as possible, because the people that cave in, like Colombia, just give Trump more power. And he's very cowardly. He backs off when he hits resistance. But many, many companies just cave. And all right, so anyway, that's it for the news. Let me stop there.